They thought humiliating a quiet black girl in the school parking lot would be just another power trip, until the sirens stopped, the ground froze, and her mother stepped out of a federal SUV. In a place where lies spread faster than truth, a pack of bullies accused Amira of stealing a car she never touched, unaware the woman they mocked was the leader of the Secret Service, trained to crush corruption with a single command. And trust me, when justice arrived, it didn't knock. The bell hadn't even rung yet, but Crestwood's playground was already buzzing, clusters of students gathering near the slides, backpacks thudding against metal benches, the sharp morning light glinting off the rows of parked cars. Amira Johnson stood quietly near the bike rack, clutching her notebooks as if they were armor. She'd only transferred here 3 days ago, and every morning felt like stepping onto a battlefield she didn't understand. Her dark blue ribbon, neatly tied under her collar, fluttered slightly in the breeze as she took a slow breath, preparing for another day of surviving silence. But silence didn't last long at Crestwood. It shattered in an instant. "Hey!" a voice roared behind her, sharp, furious, dripping privilege like venom. Before Amira could even turn, a hand clamped onto her wrist so violently that her notebook slipped from her arms and scattered across the pavement. Cole Harrington, the school's golden boy, varsity jacket, flawless hair, family rich enough to fund half the school district, and the kind of smugness that came from knowing he'd never been told no in his life. "You think you can steal from me, huh?" Cole barked, yanking Amira so hard she stumbled into him. His breath scorched her cheek. "Where did you put my car keys, you little thief?" Amira froze completely still, like prey caught in headlights, her voice lodged in her throat. She tried to pull her hand back, but Cole squeezed harder, dragging her toward the parking lot. Students turned. Phones lifted. Laughter spread like wildfire. "Dude, she totally took them," someone shouted. "She probably sold them already," another voice snickered. The words stabbed into Amira from every direction. The jokes weren't subtle, they were aimed at her skin, her identity, her existence. And she could do nothing but keep moving as Cole dragged her toward his brand-new silver sports car, parked at the edge of the lot. "Look at her face," a girl from the varsity group said, filming openly. "Tell me she doesn't look guilty." "Guilty?" Amira's shaking lips parted, but nothing came out. She wasn't just frightened, she was blindsided. She'd never touched his keys. She'd never even walked near his car. Her heart pounded so violently she felt dizzy. Cole slammed her palm onto the hood of the car and leaned in, his voice rising. "You had to pick my car? Out of all the people here? Pathetic." The crowd whooped as if this were entertainment. I didn't," Amira finally managed to whisper, her voice trembling like a loose wire. But Cole wasn't listening. With a dramatic flourish, he pressed a button on his key fob hidden between his fingers. A piercing scream of alarms exploded from the car, lights flashing violently. Students jumped back, gasping. "There!" Cole shouted. "See? She set it off. She was trying to break in." Phones recorded faster. Miss Dalton, the English teacher who always praised Cole in front of the class, rushed toward the commotion, her heels clicking urgently against the pavement. "What is going on here?" she demanded. Cole didn't miss a beat. "Miss Dalton, she tried to steal my car. She triggered the alarm when I confronted her." Miss Dalton's expression hardened instantly, not at Cole, but at Amira. "Amira, is this true?" she said sharply, folding her arms like a judge awaiting confession. "No!" Amira breathed, shaking her head so fast her ribbon nearly slipped loose. "I didn't, I swear. I didn't touch." "She's lying," Cole snapped. "Check her bag. Thieves always hide the evidence." Miss Dalton hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Open your backpack, Amira." A wave of panic crashed through her chest. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the zipper. Dozens of eyes watched. Phones zoomed in. Her breathing became shallow, tight. "I didn't take anything," she whispered again, more to herself than anyone else. Cole smirked the kind of smirk that knew the ending before the book even opened. As Amira unzipped her backpack, the students leaned closer, hungry. Then, right before she could pull it open, A varsity boy snickered loudly. Of course she took it. You know how they are. Laughter erupted. Some edited the moment into memes already. Amira's eyes burned. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. But she was trapped under the weight of their assumptions, their mockery, their cruelty. And then Cole delivered the moment he'd planned all along. Well, he said, loudly, stepping closer so everyone could hear. If she didn't steal it, how did the alarm magically go off the moment I accused her? Cars don't scream for no reason. Another wave of whispers. Another recording starting. Another stab of humiliation. What they didn't know, what not a single one of them understood, was that Cole had pressed the panic button himself while pretending to inspect the car. But Amira had no way to prove it. The truth was locked inside Cole's fist, hidden by privilege and crowd noise. She opened her backpack with trembling hands. Before she could even process the emptiness inside it, Cole grabbed her arm again. "That's it," he snarled. "You're coming with us. The school needs to see exactly what you tried to pull." "Miss," Dalton nodded coldly, "we will handle this in the office. Students, back to your areas." No one moved, because dragging a terrified black girl across the pavement was far more exciting than any morning class. Amira's eyes shimmered with tears. She refused to let fall, as Cole pulled her forward, and the whole playground split open with whispers, recording, laughing, while one girl stood powerless in the center of the storm. But this was only the spark. The real fire hadn't started yet, because the one person who could burn this entire lie to the ground hadn't arrived. Not yet. But this was only the fuse to something far bigger. Amira was pulled away under the eyes of the entire playground, straight into the jaws of a brutal injustice waiting to unfold. Miss Dalton's office always smelled like old paper and even older judgments. A stack of graded essays towered precariously on the corner of her desk, red ink bleeding across them like open wounds. Posters about integrity and honesty hung crooked on the walls, ironic reminders of values she enforced on some students but not others. And today, Amira Johnson was the unlucky target of those selectively applied rules. Cole marched into the room first, chest puffed out with self-righteous fury. He sat without being asked, legs spread wide, varsity jacket draped proudly around his shoulders like a medal. He knew the room belonged to him just as much as it belonged to Miss Dalton. He knew she favored him. Everyone did. Amira followed reluctantly, each step heavy, like walking into her own sentencing. Her hands were still trembling from the blow of the false accusation. She slid into the chair opposite Miss Dalton, her breath shallow. Her chest tightened as she clutched the straps of her backpack, keeping it close as if it was her last shield. Miss Dalton shut the door behind them with a sharp click. No escape. "Cole," she began warmly, as if greeting a friend, not a student involved in an accusation. "Tell me exactly what happened. Not Amira, are you okay? Not let's hear both sides. Not even did anyone witness this? Just Cole." He sat up straighter, ready to perform. "She tried to steal my car keys," he declared, dramatically slamming his palm on the desk. "I found her lurking near my car, and when I confronted her, boom, the alarm went off. She panicked and tried to run." Miss Dalton nodded approvingly, writing rapidly in her notebook. "Suspicious behavior. Possible attempt at theft." The words cut Amira open like blades. "That's not true," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I wasn't near his car. I was—" "Amira," Miss Dalton interrupted sharply, raising a hand as if swatting away a fly. "You will speak when I ask you to. Right now, I am gathering Cole's account." Cole's smirk widened. Of course he was being believed. He always was. "And," he continued, leaning back with casual arrogance, "I think she might be hiding the keys in her backpack. Thieves always hide the evidence." Amira's pulse spiked. She gripped her bag tighter. "I told you I never touched—" "Enough, Miss," Dalton snapped, eyes narrowing. "Your attitude is not helping you." "Attitude?" She hadn't even raised her voice. She was drowning quietly, yet somehow that was still too loud for Miss Dalton. Cole watched her crumble with gleeful satisfaction. But what Amira didn't know, what no one in that room except Cole himself understood, was that he was already several steps ahead. Because while Miss Dalton was dragging Amira to the office, Cole had lagged behind to talk to a friend. In those 5 seconds, he had slipped his hand into her half-open backpack. Amira never zipped it fully because her hands were shaking, and placed his own car keys deep inside. A staged crime scene, a planted weapon, a trap perfectly set. Now, he only needed her to open the bag in front of the teacher. Miss Dalton finished writing, capped her pen with an air of finality, and looked up. "Amira," she said coldly, as if addressing a criminal, "open your backpack." The room fell silent. Even Cole held his breath, not out of fear, but out of sick anticipation. Amira's fingers tightened painfully around the zipper. Her eyes darted from Miss Dalton to Cole and back again. The walls seemed to close in on her. Her heart pounded against her ribs, screaming warnings she couldn't explain. "I didn't take anything," she whispered. "I swear. I don't know what he's talking about." "Open it, Miss," Dalton repeated, her tone leaving no room for choice. Hands trembling violently, Amira set the bag on her lap. A single tear slipped down her cheek, staining her ribbon before she even realized she was crying. She unzipped the bag. Cole leaned forward. Miss Dalton's pen hovered over the form, and then the metallic jingle filled the room. The car keys, right on top of her notebooks, perfectly placed, perfectly incriminating, perfectly damning. Amira's breath shattered. "No, no, no, these weren't, someone put them there," she stammered, voice trembling into desperation. "I didn't do this. I didn't." Cole stood abruptly, pointing an accusing finger toward her face. "See," he roared, caught red-handed. "I told you she stole them." Miss Dalton didn't even hesitate. She circled, evidence found in possession, in thick red ink on her form. The world collapsed around Amira. Her throat closed. Her lungs screamed. Her vision blurred. She felt her soul shrink under the weight of a crime she didn't commit. "Miss Dalton, please," she begged, hands shaking so hard the keys rattled on her lap. "Someone put them there. I didn't take them. I promise. But Miss Dalton simply stood from her desk and collected the form, lips pressed tightly together. "This is serious, Amira," she said frostily. "Crestwood has a zero-tolerance policy for theft. You will remain here while I notify the principal and your parent or guardian." Cole crossed his arms and grinned. "Told you she was trouble." Amira's knees felt weak. She wanted to stand, to scream, to tear the truth out of the air itself, but she couldn't move. She was frozen in humiliation, disbelief, and the crushing realization that no one in this room saw her as innocent. The truth wasn't just being ignored, it was being buried by a teacher, by a system, by a lie too powerful for her small voice to break. Miss Dalton picked up the office phone. Amira's tears finally fell. "Hello?" Miss Dalton said. "Yes. We need you to come immediately. Your daughter is involved in a theft investigation." Amira's heart snapped in half. Her mother would think she stole something. Her mother, the strongest person she knew. Her mother who trusted her. Her mother who believed in her. Cole leaned in slightly, whispering just loud enough for Amira to hear, "You're finished." Her stomach twisted. But the story wasn't finished. Not even close. Because the woman on the other end of that phone call wasn't just any mother. She was the last person anyone should ever accuse a child of crossing. But the truth had only been twisted, halfway, and the storm waiting outside this office would tear every lie apart. The school prepared to summon Amira's mother to resolve the criminal behavior, unaware that they had just invited a force far beyond their control. Principal Klein's office was the kind of place designed to make students shrink. The blinds were half closed, slicing the sunlight into thin, interrogating beams. Diplomas lined the wall behind his desk, framed in dark wood to give the illusion of wisdom. But nothing about the man sitting behind that desk suggested fairness. His fingers tapped impatiently on the polished surface as Miss Dalton marched Amira inside, followed by Cole, who walked in as if he owned the room. "Sit!" Klein said without looking up. Amira lowered herself into the chair slowly, feeling as if the earth beneath her were collapsing. Cole dropped into the seat beside her with a dramatic sigh, his varsity jacket rustling like a reminder of his untouchable status. Miss Dalton handed Klein the incident form. "Evidence found in her possession," she stated firmly. "Keys retrieved from the student's backpack." Klein barely skimmed the paperwork before exhaling heavily, the kind of sigh adults used when they'd already decided the outcome. "I see." He leaned back, folding his hands across his stomach. "Amira, this is a very serious accusation." "It wasn't me," Amira whispered, eyes burning. "I didn't even know what his keys looked like. Cole jumped in, clutching the arm of his chair. "She was near my car. She set off the alarm. And when I confronted her, she got aggressive. I felt threatened. Threatened." The word hung in the air like poison. Amira's breath hitched. "What? I never threatened." "Enough," Klein said sharply. "Cole, thank you for being honest. I know this must have been upsetting for you." Cole lowered his head, pretending to wipe his eyes. The performance was flawless. He could have won an award. "Miss." Dalton placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, something she had never done for any other student. "Principal Klein," she said softly, "given the evidence and the disruption, I recommend immediate suspension. Theft, attempted theft, and dishonesty cannot be tolerated." Klein nodded, without hesitation, as if the decision had been made long before Amira entered the room. "Well," he said, slipping on his glasses, "protocol is clear. Amira will be suspended for 3 days while we investigate further." The words hit her like a physical blow. "No, please," Amira cried, sitting forward. "I didn't touch his car. I didn't touch anything. Someone put the keys in my backpack. I didn't, please. I'm telling the truth." Klein's face remained stone. "I understand this is upsetting," he said calmly, "but the evidence contradicts your statement." "What evidence?" Amira demanded through tears. "A pair of keys someone planted in my bag. You didn't even listen." "Watch your tone," Klein cut in. "You're making this worse for yourself." Amira's voice wavered, cracking under the pressure. She wasn't just fighting the accusation, she was fighting an entire system aligned against her. Cole leaned away from her dramatically. "I don't feel safe," he muttered. "She's yelling again." Miss Dalton nodded sympathetically. "You see? This behavior is exactly why we need consequences." Amira clutched the edges of her seat, chest collapsing inward. "This isn't fair," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're punishing me for something I didn't do." Klein removed his glasses. "Life isn't always fair, Amira, but rules are rules." Her heart cracked. Still, she tried one more time. "They didn't show you the whole story," she said desperately. "There were people filming. Someone must have." And as if summoned by fate, Klein's computer pinged. A notification, a new anonymous upload to the school's student forum. Klein frowned and clicked it open. A video filled the screen. Shaky footage, but clear enough. Cole grabbing Amira by the wrist. Cole yanking her across the pavement. Cole shouting into her face while students laughed. The girls filming were giggling, not realizing they were capturing the truth behind the lie. Amira's heart thudded. This is what I'm talking about," she exclaimed. "Someone posted it. That's proof." But the video cut off just before Cole slammed her hand on the car hood, just before he pressed the alarm button, just before he planted the keys. His face wasn't visible, only his jacket, his voice, his aggression. But the missing seconds left just enough ambiguity. Klein sighed again. "While concerning," he admitted slowly, "this footage does not prove innocence. It doesn't show the supposed planting of keys, and it doesn't show who triggered the alarm. Without a full view of the situation, we cannot use this as exonerating evidence." Amira's stomach dropped. "It shows him dragging me. Why doesn't that matter?" Miss Dalton stepped in, her voice sharp. "Because none of that changes the fact that the keys were found in your bag." Cole crossed his arms smugly. "She was trying to run," he added. "I was just stopping her. I had to protect my property." Protect property. The words stung like acid. Klein rubbed his forehead as if exhausted by her resistance. The decision stands. 3-day suspension. Tears streamed down Amira's cheeks. "This is wrong," she whispered. "It's all wrong." Cole glanced at her with a small, victorious smirk. "Miss." Dalton placed the suspension slip on the desk. "I'll call her mother," she offered, almost cheerfully. "I'm sure she'll want to handle this promptly." Klein nodded. "Do that." Amira felt the ground disappear beneath her. Losing her voice was one thing, losing her future was another. Miss Dalton lifted the phone and dialed. "Hello, Mrs. Johnson? This is Crestwood Academy. We need you to come to the school immediately. Your daughter has been involved in a serious disciplinary matter." A pause. "Yes. Theft." Amira squeezed her eyes shut. Her mother would be disappointed. Her mother would think she'd failed. Her mother wouldn't believe no. She would. Because no one knew Amira's truth more fiercely than the woman on the other end of that call. When Miss Dalton hung up, she turned with a satisfied nod. "She'll be here shortly." Amira wiped her face with shaking hands, the humiliation unbearable. But something in her chest flickered a tiny spark of hope she didn't understand. Because if there was one person who could unravel a lie this big, it was Lorraine Johnson. All it would take was one more piece of truth, and the entire tower of lies would tremble. And the moment her mother heard the words, theft, investigation, she canceled her briefing, changed her route, and headed straight for Crestwood with a storm following behind her. The sun had climbed higher over Crestwood's parking lot, but the air around Amira felt colder than ever. Miss Dalton had escorted her outside to wait for her mother, instructing her to reflect on her actions, while Cole and a handful of students lingered nearby, pretending they weren't watching, but making absolutely sure they didn't miss a second of her humiliation. Cars hummed in and out of the lot, students whispered behind their hands, some glancing at Amira with pity, others with smug satisfaction. Her backpack lay at her feet, the cursed keys still sitting inside like a ticking time bomb. Cole leaned against his car with breezy arrogance, arms crossed, chewing gum like nothing in the world could touch him. Every few seconds, he side-eyed Amira with a smirk, sharp enough to cut. "So," he mused loudly, "your mom's coming? Can't wait to see what kind of explanation she gives. Maybe she'll blame racism or something." His friends snickered. Amira lowered her gaze. Her cheeks burned, not from shame but from helplessness. She could endure being accused, but the thought of her mother seeing her like this twisted her stomach into knots. Minutes crawled by. Then the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't the kind of shift people consciously recognized. It was instinctual, primal. A sudden heaviness rolled over the parking lot the way animals fall silent when something bigger steps into their territory. A sleek black SUV, the kind you only saw escorting diplomats or appearing in political thrillers, turned sharply into the lot. It didn't slow down until it reached the group. Its tinted windows reflected the students like blank, unreadable eyes. No school parent drove a vehicle like that. The SUV came to a stop. Silence swallowed everything. Cole straightened but forced a laugh. "What is this, the FBI?" He didn't know how close he was. The driver stepped out first, broad, stone-faced, wearing a plain suit that screamed federal without saying a word. He scanned the area like he was assessing a threat level. Students stiffened. Then, the back door opened, and Lorraine Johnson stepped out, not in heels, not flustered, not in a rush. She emerged like someone who knew she commanded every inch of ground she walked on. Her suit was tailored, midnight blue, her hair pulled back with military precision, her steps crisp, controlled. Authority radiated from her like heat off asphalt. But when her eyes locked on Amira, everything froze. There, on her daughter's cheek, was a faint red mark. Not dramatic, not grotesque, but unmistakable. It hit Lorraine like a bullet. Her jaw tightened. Her nostrils flared just slightly. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes sharpened into weapons. "Mom," Amira whispered, voice trembling. Lorraine closed the distance in 3 strides and knelt slightly, examining the mark with a surgeon's precision. Her fingers brushed Amira's cheek with a tenderness that contrasted violently with the storm brewing behind her eyes. "Who touched you?" Her voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before catastrophe. Amira opened her mouth, unsure where to start, but she didn't need to answer. Cole snorted. "Oh, come on. It wasn't even a real hit. She was resisting me." Lorraine turned her head, slowly, very slowly. Her gaze landed on Cole, and something ancient and instinctive inside him curled back in fear. For the first time today, his smirk faltered. "What did you say?" Lorraine asked quietly. Cole swallowed hard but forced out a laugh. "Look, lady, your kid stole my keys. I caught her." Lorraine rose to her full height, not towering, but commanding with a presence that could make a grown general sit straighter. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply looked at him. One look, sharp as broken glass, cold as a loaded chamber, focused like a trained weapon. Cole stumbled back half a step before he even realized he'd moved. His friends stared, stunned. They'd seen teachers yell, principals scold, even officers visit the school, but they had never seen someone look at a student like she was evaluating whether he posed a national threat. Lorraine slowly stepped toward him, each footfall measured. "You grabbed my daughter?" she said, voice dropping into something dangerous. Cole tried to muster his earlier confidence. She stole... She what?" Lorraine cut in, taking one more step. "Finish your sentence." The boy's throat bobbed. His fingers tightened around his jacket sleeve. His breathing hitched. He didn't understand why his nerves were betraying him, why his instincts were screaming at him to run. But every cell in his body recognized power, real power, not varsity jacket school celebrity power, the kind that moves entire agencies with a signature. "Look, I was just protecting my property," he stammered weakly. "It's not a big deal." Lorraine's eyes narrowed with precision. "A grown boy laying hands on a girl is a big deal," she said, "and laying hands on my daughter." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Cole's legs wobbled. His eyes darted around as if searching for an ally, but his friends stayed frozen, unwilling to step between him and whatever force Lorraine brought with her. Even Miss Dalton grew pale. "Mrs. Johnson," the teacher said quickly, stepping forward, "we understand you're upset, but this matter is being handled appropriately by school policy." Lorraine didn't even look at her. She kept her gaze locked on Cole, who, for the first time, looked very small. Then she spoke. "I want to see the security footage. All of it." Her tone wasn't a request. It was an order issued with the same authority she used when commanding federal teams through presidential motorcades. Miss Dalton blinked. We don't usually allow parents to..." "Now," Lorraine said. "Just one word." "Miss." Dalton flinched. Students whispered in shock. Cole's breathing grew shallow. Because even without knowing Lorraine's identity, every instinct in his body was screaming, "This is not someone you lie to. This is not someone you accuse lightly. This is not someone you mess with." He had no idea who he had just crossed. Lorraine's eyes shifted toward the school building, already strategizing, already hunting for the truth, as she repeated her demand. "Show me every second of your cameras." The surveillance room of Crestwood Academy was dim, cramped, and smelled faintly of cheap carpet and overheated computer monitors. A long wall of screens flickered with images from around the campus hallways, stairwells, entrances, the courtyard. The silent hum of machinery filled the air like a warning. Lorraine stepped inside first. She didn't storm in. She didn't rush. She simply entered, and the entire room seemed to follow her orbit. Principal Klein trailed behind her, sweating despite the cold AC. Miss Dalton pursed her lips tightly, arms crossed defensively. The school's lone technician, a nervous man named Patterson, sat frozen at his console, like a deer caught between headlights and a cliff. "Pull up the parking lot angles," Lorraine said, not asked. Said. Patterson's fingers scrambled across the keyboard. The screens shifted until multiple camera feeds from the lot showed synchronized footage. Students walking, cars arriving, early morning chatter. But the crucial time frame where Cole had dragged Amira activated the car alarm, and planted the keys was missing. The feed simply jumped forward by 6 minutes. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. Where is the segment from 8:17 to 8:23? Patterson swallowed. The system must have malfunctioned. Klein quickly stepped in. We've had some issues with our older cameras. They drop frames sometimes. Lorraine turned her head slowly. One cold stare. Klein flinched. Show me the diagnostics, she said. Patterson hesitated. Those files are internal. They're not diagnostics. Now, Lorraine repeated, her tone thin as ice. Patterson pulled up the logs. A wall of timestamps and system entries appeared on the central monitor. Lorraine stepped closer, her eyes scanning line by line with frightening speed. Klein cleared his throat. Even if the footage glitched, Mrs. Johnson, we still have eyewitness accounts and physical evidence. We can't rely on silence, Lorraine said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Miss Dalton stiffened. Klein's mouth snapped shut instinctively, as if someone had pressed a remote and muted him. Lorraine's finger slid across the screen, stopping abruptly at a single line in the system log. Camera. Lot 2. Disabled. 8 hours, 14 minutes and 57 seconds. USER access. Administrator override her. Jaw tightened. Then another line. Camera Lot 3. Disabled 8 hours, 15 minutes and 4 seconds. UESR access. Administrator override following. Closely. Camera Lot 5. Disabled 8 hours, 15 minutes and 9 seconds. User access. Administrator override more lines. More overrides. From different cameras. All within a 15-second window. All exactly 3 minutes before Cole dragged Amira into frame. Lorraine leaned back slightly, lips curling into something between disappointment and fury. Your cameras didn't malfunction, she said quietly. Someone turned them off. Patterson blanched. Klein's face flushed red. Miss Dalton's hands tightened into fists. That's impossible, Klein sputtered. Only administrators have that access. And exactly, Lorraine interrupted. Her attention remained fixed on the logs. Her voice was a scalpel, precise, deadly. Someone with admin credentials disabled multiple cameras in sequence, and they did it deliberately. This wasn't an accident or a glitch. This was a cover-up. Miss Dalton stepped forward, her tone brittle. Mrs. Johnson, surely you're not suggesting someone here would sabotage school property just to help a student? That's outrageous. Lorraine turned toward her. Miss Dalton instantly regretted speaking. You vouched for the boy, Lorraine said. You wrote the incident report. You insisted the evidence was clear. So tell me, how did you know, with such certainty, that something you never witnessed was true? Dalton's face drained of color. I trusted Cole's account, she stammered. He's always been a privileged student with a spotless record, Lorraine cut in. Or a child who knows which adults will believe him without question? Dalton said nothing. Klein tried again. Mrs. Johnson, I understand your frustration. But even if someone tampered with the cameras, it doesn't prove your daughter didn't. Lorraine stepped closer until she was inches from his face. Principal Klein, she said in a tone so calm it made the room colder, you are not in a position to tell me what this does or does not prove. He swallowed, unable to hold her gaze. She continued, I want full access to the administrator login repository. Every credential, every device used today, every keystroke registered since 7 a.m. That's highly confidential. Parents do not get that level of, I do, Lorraine said, because this is now a criminal matter. The room froze. Patterson nearly dropped his mouse. Miss Dalton choked on her breath. Klein stared at her like she had just detonated a bomb under his desk. Criminal? Klein croaked. Mrs. Johnson, surely we can resolve this internally. No, Lorraine said. You crossed that threshold when you accused my daughter of a felony while burying evidence that could have cleared her. She tapped the screen. Camera tampering is a federal offense when it obstructs investigation of a student's safety. Patterson sat frozen, sweating through his shirt. Lorraine took out her phone, a black, matte device, not the kind parents used to text carpools. This was government-issued, encrypted, restricted. She typed a short sequence. 3 numbers. A pause. Then an alphanumeric code. Klein stared, confused. What? What are you doing? Calling in an evaluation team, Lorraine replied without emotion. An evaluation team? Dalton blinked. You mean, like district auditors? Lorraine looked at her with a mixture of pity and disdain. No, she said. District auditors don't use this signal. Patterson whispered. What signal? Lorraine's eyes stayed cold. A federal recall code. Even the machines seemed to hum louder, as if sensing the weight of her words. Someone here, she continued, used administrator privileges to hide the truth. Someone thought they were untouchable. Someone thought manipulating evidence would protect a liar. She closed her phone with a sharp click, but they have no idea who they're up against. Silence suffocated the room. Cole might have been the spark, but this level of tampering, this coordination, this precision, no child had orchestrated this. Someone older, someone scared, someone desperate to protect a name, or a donor, or a family with influence. Lorraine's voice cut through the silence. Get me the full server logs. All of them. Patterson scrambled to comply. Klein stepped back. Dalton's knees shook. And in that moment, the balance of power in Crestwood Academy shifted permanently. The person behind this wasn't just a child, and Lorraine was about to expose them. With one final, decisive motion, Lorraine sent a secure code to Shadow 7, the covert unit that answered only to her, and somewhere miles away, alarms lit up. The parking lot of Crestwood Academy looked ordinary from afar, sunlight gleaming off windshields, the soft chatter of students drifting from the courtyard, a few teachers escorting late arrivals through the gate. But beneath that calm surface, something far more calculated was moving. Lorraine stood at the edge of the lot with her arms crossed, posture still, eyes sharp. She looked like a parent waiting for a ride, but anyone trained in threat recognition would have seen the truth immediately. She was monitoring a perimeter. 10 minutes earlier, she had sent the encrypted recall code, and 10 minutes was exactly how long it took for them to arrive. A nondescript black sedan pulled into a side lane, not flashy like government SUVs, not intimidating, just forgettable, perfectly forgettable. The kind of vehicle that could have driven past a police checkpoint without raising a single eyebrow. 3 figures stepped out, suits crisp, movements coordinated, expressions unreadable. Shadow 7, the covert unit of the Secret Service Cyber Division. The team Lorraine trusted to clean up political espionage, intercept domestic data breaches, and quietly handle matters that never reached the public. Today, they were here for her daughter. The tallest agent approached first, nodding subtly. Director Johnson. He didn't say her title like it was optional. He said it like it was law. Lorraine inclined her head. Begin. No one else in the parking lot seemed to notice the arrival of 3 highly trained cyber operatives. They blended in with the shadows cast by the car rows, moving with precision and silence. Amira, still shaken from the confrontation, stood near a bench with her backpack clutched tightly. Lorraine placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This will be over soon," she murmured. Cole, meanwhile, lingered in the distance with a group of friends. He had regained some of his performative bravado, gesturing, laughing, reenacting moments from the incident, as if telling a campfire horror story. His audience ate it up. Shadow 7 paid him no attention. One agent knelt beside Cole's silver sports car, retrieving a matte black device roughly the size of a tablet. It wasn't anything a civilian would recognize, modified hardware wired for deep-access vehicle diagnostics, capable of reading internal logs that even dealership mechanics couldn't reach. Lorraine stood behind him, watching. The agent tapped through several menus, his gloved fingers moving quickly, efficiently. Data scrolled down the screen, time-stamped logs of the car's locking system, alarm triggers, ignition states. Cole's laughter drifted across the lot, and then she totally froze up like she knew she got caught, bro. The agent paused. "Director?" he said. Lorraine stepped closer. "What do you see?" The agent flipped the device so she could read the results. Line after line of logs showed no unauthorized entry detected. Alarm triggered internal activation. Key fob command received. Panic mode. At 8:20 a.m. The exact moment Cole had claimed that Amira set off the alarm. Her jaw tightened. "Internal activation?" she repeated. "Yes, ma'am," the agent confirmed. "Triggered from the key fob, not from forced entry, not from exterior tampering, and certainly not from a failed theft attempt." Amira inhaled sharply. "So he pressed it himself?" The agent nodded. "It was staged," Lorraine said quietly. But Shadow 7 wasn't done. Another agent approached, holding a compact laptop connected to a wireless module. "Director Johnson, I accessed the car's Bluetooth handshake logs." "Go ahead," Lorraine said. He pressed enter. A new screen appeared, a list of devices previously synced or attempting to sync with the car's onboard system. The last entry caught her eye. Device ID Harrington Phone 02. Connect attempt. Failed. Data scan. Initiated. Flag. Suspicious behavior 08. 11. Lorraine's expression hardened. The agent continued. "It appears Cole attempted to extract data from the car's internal system using a mobile device, probably trying to mirror or access the owner console." "Why would a 14-year-old try to hack his own car?" Lorraine asked. The agent gave a grim smile. "He wasn't trying to hack his car. He was testing penetration methods likely for something else. Kids like this get involved in school-level data rings all the time. Grades, addresses, personal information. There's a growing black market, small but profitable." Lorraine stared at the screen. Plot twist #6 slammed into place. Cole wasn't just staging a car key theft to humiliate her daughter. He was creating a distraction. A loud, public scandal to keep the school and its administration busy while he tampered with systems behind the scenes. Her expression sharpened. "He's involved in a student data trafficking ring," she said. "And he used the fabricated theft accusation to divert attention." The agent nodded. "That would explain the administrator-level camera shutdowns. Someone older may be involved, but the boy is definitely part of the scheme." Lorraine looked across the lot. Cole was still laughing, still bragging, still oblivious to the fact that the walls of his own deception were collapsing around him. Her voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "He thinks he's untouchable." Shadow 7 exchanged glances. "He won't be for long," one of them said. Amira looked between the agents, her mother, shock and disbelief swirling in her eyes. "Mom, this is way bigger than me, isn't it?" Lorraine crouched to Amira's height. "Everything they did to you," she said softly, "was built on lies, but these lies reach further than you, and I'm going to end all of it." Amira swallowed, nodding slowly. Lorraine rose. "Pack up," she told the agents. "We have everything we need." The tall one closed the diagnostic device. "Do you want us to detain the boy?" "Not yet," Lorraine said. "First, his parents need to see this. They've protected him long enough." Across the lot, Cole noticed Lorraine watching him. For the first time, his smile flickered. Something primal in him recognized the danger, recognized that this woman wasn't just a concerned mother. She was a threat. Lorraine stepped away from the agents and pulled out her encrypted phone. Again. A few taps, a short command, a direct order. "Summon the Harringtons," she said. Immediately. Her voice held no hesitation, no fear, only intent, the kind of intent that changed outcomes. Cole's lie was only the surface. The truth was far darker than a petty accusation. Lorraine turned toward the school building, eyes sharp with purpose, ready to confront the parents of the boy who had tried to destroy her daughter. The conference room at Crestwood Academy was designed for polite meetings, parent-teacher conferences, donor gatherings, polished presentations about academic achievement. But today, the space felt more like a battleground. A long mahogany table sliced the room in half, and along its edges sat the people who would determine the fate of the day. Lorraine stood at the far end, arms behind her back, posture straight as a blade. Beside her sat Amira, hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes still swollen from earlier tears, but now replaced with a flicker of resolve. Principal Klein hovered nervously near his chair. Miss Dalton sat rigidly, fingers entwined so tightly her knuckles were white. Cole lounged with forced confidence, though his bouncing knee betrayed him. And then the door opened. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington swept into the room like they owned not just the school, but the state. Mr. Harrington wore a tailored suit that cost more than most teachers' monthly salary. His presence filled the space instantly. Broad shoulders, silver cufflinks, an expression carved from arrogance. Mrs. Harrington stood beside him, sunglasses still on though they were indoors, an unnecessary accessory designed purely to signal superiority. "Let's get this sorted quickly, Mr. Harrington said, not bothering to greet anyone. "We have a board meeting in 40 minutes. Klein jumped to speak. Of course. We appreciate your time." Lorraine didn't move, didn't blink, didn't acknowledge their attempted dominance. Mrs. Harrington took a seat, crossing her legs elegantly. "Where is the girl who attacked our son?" "She didn't attack me," Cole said, though his tone was more tentative than before. "She tried to steal my—" Lorraine finally lifted her gaze to him. He froze mid-sentence. Mr. Harrington cleared his throat, annoyed at the interruption. "Our son has been traumatized by this event. We expect the school to handle it discreetly. No suspensions, no police involvement. We can't afford unnecessary publicity." Klein straightened, eager to please. "We were considering a minor disciplinary action for the girl, but nothing formal." Lorraine spoke for the first time. "No." The word cut the room clean in half. Mr. Harrington's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me?" Lorraine stepped closer to the table. "There will be no quiet resolution, no sweeping anything under the rug, and no special treatment." Harrington raised an eyebrow. "And who exactly do you think you are?" Lorraine reached into her jacket. Slowly, deliberately, she set a leather case on the table. With a flick of her thumb, it opened. A gold and blue badge glinted under the fluorescent lights. "United States Secret Service, Directorate of Counterintelligence." The room collectively inhaled. Miss Dalton's mouth fell open. Klein stumbled backward into his chair. Mrs. Harrington removed her sunglasses for the first time, eyes widening. Cole's face drained of color. Lorraine's voice remained steady. "I am the person who ensures national security isn't compromised by corrupt systems, or by people who believe their money makes them untouchable." Mr. Harrington recovered quickly, forcing a smirk. "Well, director or not, this is a school matter, and we have the financial leverage to—" Lorraine snapped the badge case shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You have no leverage here," she said. "Your son created a fabricated accusation to cover up something far more serious, and your administrators assisted intentionally or through incompetence." Harrington bristled. "How dare you accuse—" "I'm not accusing," Lorraine said. "I'm stating facts." She gestured toward the door. As if on cue, one of the Shadow 7 agents appeared silently, carrying a tablet. Lorraine nodded, and the agent set the device on the table. A series of files glowed on screen. Alarm logs, internal activation, Bluetooth hacking attempts, data breach attempts from Cole's device, camera shutdown logs tied to administrator credentials. Cole shrank into his chair. Mrs. Harrington gasped softly. "Cole, what is this?" he stammered. I didn't. I mean someone else." But Lorraine wasn't looking at him anymore. Her eyes were locked on his father. "Does this situation feel familiar to you?" she asked. Harrington stiffened. Lorraine continued, her tone surgical. "A privileged individual with access to systems they shouldn't have. Tampered logs, money used to influence institutions, and buried investigations." Harrington's throat tightened. Mrs. Harrington turned slowly toward him. "What is she talking about?" Lorraine leaned forward, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. 7 years ago, the Secret Service launched an inquiry into a corporate data laundering scheme. A scheme involving 3 executives. Her stare sharpened. "You were one of them." The color drained from Mr. Harrington's face. That investigation was sealed. No, Lorraine corrected. It was suspended due to jurisdictional conflicts, but your name was never cleared. And now your son is engaging in the same behavior. Mrs. Harrington covered her mouth. You told me that case was nothing. Enough, Harrington snapped, but his voice cracked. Lorraine straightened. You should have known better. You should have stopped him. Instead, you encouraged his belief that he could get away with anything. She tapped the tablet. Cole flinched. These logs prove he attempted to infiltrate restricted data. He attempted to breach school systems, and he orchestrated a false accusation to distract from his criminal activities. Miss Dalton whispered, "Oh my God." Klein slumped into his chair, sweat rolling down his temples. Mrs. Harrington stood abruptly. "Cole, how could you do this?" But Lorraine raised a hand, silencing the room once more. "This is not about panic," she said. "This is about honesty." She turned to Klein. "Starting now, you will release all data Cole has hidden. All server logs, all administrator access records. You will cooperate fully." Klein nodded shakily. "Yes, of course." Lorraine surveyed the room. Her presence eclipsed every ego present, every power play, every delusion of influence. Harrington lowered his gaze. Knowing he was no longer the strongest man in the room, he never was. Cole stared at the floor, his world collapsing. No one expected the past to return like this, and certainly not in this room. Lorraine's voice cut through the stillness. "Next, we expose every file your son has been hiding." The room darkened as the blinds were pulled shut. The hum of the projector filled the silence like a low warning siren. A bright rectangle of light flickered onto the wall, illuminating the faces gathered around the conference table. Lorraine stood nearest to the screen, arms folded, her expression unreadable. Shadow 7 positioned themselves discreetly behind her, ready to navigate the evidence. Across from them sat the Harringtons, shell-shocked. Cole slumped in his chair, pale and trembling. Klein and Dalton hovered like guilty bystanders at a crime scene they never expected to witness. "Let's begin," Lorraine said. The lead Shadow 7 agent tapped the tablet. The first video appeared. A still frame. Cole's bedroom. Lights dim. Laptop screen glowing. His face illuminated in a sickly blue hue. A cursor moved rapidly across the screen. Windows opened. Encrypted drives mounted. Names, addresses, ID numbers, password hashes, a digital graveyard of stolen student information. Mrs. Harrington gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Cole, what are you doing?" Mr. Harrington closed his eyes, jaw tightening, but he didn't deny what was on the screen. He had seen data theft before. Too much of it. Cole jolted upright, voice cracking. This is taken out of context. I was just messing around." But the next clip appeared. Cole copying entire folders labeled GPA, overrides, discipline, logs, student, contact, info, staff, credentials. Then another window. Chat log buyer alpha deliver list by Friday. Payment same as last time. Another message. Cover your tracks. School admin doesn't suspect anything. Cole's panicked voice cracked again. "That's not me. Someone must have hacked." Mrs. Harrington's voice sliced through his lie. "Stop lying!" Cole's breath sputtered. Tears pooled in his eyes, but they weren't remorseful tears. They were tears of someone watching his empire crumble. Shadow 7 moved to the next slide. A spreadsheet. Thousands of student entries, each row representing a child whose privacy had been violated. Klein slumped back, horrified. This is catastrophic," Miss Dalton whispered. How did this happen under our roof?" Lorraine turned her head slightly. "It happened because you believed the wrong child." Dalton's face burned red. The next screen flashed. Transaction history. Cryptocurrency transfers. Small but steady payments. Enough to incentivize a teenager. Enough to implicate someone older helping facilitate the scheme. Mr. Harrington's voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. "Cole, you told me you stopped messing with that stuff." I didn't, Dad. It's not like that. These are fake. Someone set me up. But his desperation was no match for the final blow. The Shadow 7 agent pressed another button. A new video appeared, recovered from a partially corrupted camera. File. Footage the school thought was gone. It wasn't. The clip began a few minutes before the incident. Students were milling about the lot. Cole stood beside his car, checking his surroundings. He took a half step back, looking at something off-screen. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his keys, looked around again, and with a quick downward motion, he slipped them into the half-open backpack resting near the bike rack. Amira's backpack. The room erupted. Mrs. Harrington. Cole. Principal Klein. Oh my God. Miss Dalton. This can't be real. Cole shot out of his chair, screaming. That's edited. You edited that. They edited that. But Lorraine didn't move, didn't raise her voice, didn't break composure for a second. She simply said, the footage is raw, cryptographically authenticated, unaltered. Cole lunged toward the projector as if he could rip the truth off the wall. But Mr. Harrington grabbed him by the shoulders. Sit down, he growled at his son. Not Lorraine. Cole collapsed into the chair, shaking violently. The video continued. 3 minutes later, the camera caught him grabbing Amira, dragging her toward the car, yelling loudly enough for the crowd to gather. Then his thumb pressed the panic button on his fob. The car exploded in alarms. The lie sealed. The trap set. The humiliation weaponized. And then cut. The video ended, but no one in the room breathed. Cole stared at the blank screen as if it were a death to sentence. Amira stared at the floor, tears sliding silently down her face, not from pain, but from vindication, from finally being seen, from finally being believed. Lorraine stepped forward. Do you have anything to say, Cole? He shook his head violently. It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean I just... He suddenly pointed at the screen, screaming through tears. It was my friends. They told me to do it. They said it would distract everyone while I... His voice collapsed. He buried his face in his hands. Mrs. Harrington sobbed. Mr. Harrington looked decades older in seconds. Miss. Dalton struggled for breath. Klein rubbed his temples as if trying to erase the morning. Lorraine waited. Waited for the last excuses to die out. Waited for the truth to settle like ash. Then she spoke. Your son hacked school systems, trafficked protected student data, manipulated staff, fabricated accusations, and assaulted my daughter. She stepped closer to the table. He doesn't need mercy. He needs accountability. Cole's head jerked up, eyes wide with terror. Please, please don't. Lorraine raised a hand, silencing him. This is beyond the school's authority. This is criminal. Klein swallowed. Mrs. Johnson, Lorraine, what are you suggesting? Lorraine looked directly at him. Prosecution, according to federal and state law. Her words landed like the strike of a judge's gavel. There was no going back. Cole's future, once polished and protected, cracked open like shattered glass. The room fell into stunned silence. There was no denying the truth now, no loophole, no lie left standing. Lorraine tapped the screen one last time and said, Prepare everything. The authorities will take it from here. The silence in Principal Klein's office felt heavier than the air inside a courtroom. The entire building seemed to be holding its breath. Moments ago, Cole's empire of lies had collapsed in a violent implosion, and now Lorraine was ready to dismantle the foundation that allowed it to exist. Klein paced behind his desk, wiping sweat off his forehead with a trembling hand. His tie sat loosened, his posture collapsed, his bravado gone, his carefully crafted aura of authority stripped bare. Amira sat quietly beside her mother, still shaken but steady enough to witness what was coming. Her fingers gently rubbed the fabric of her sleeve, grounding herself in the moment. Lorraine stood near the center of the room, hands clasped behind her back, her presence commanding without a single raised voice. The door clicked shut. Klein froze. Mrs. Johnson, he began weakly, I know this looks bad, but I want to assure you, the school is committed to transparency, and Lorraine lifted a single finger. Klein went silent instantly, as though she had pressed a mute button. "You hid the truth," Lorraine said calmly. "You protected a dangerous student, and you allowed my daughter to be publicly humiliated, accused, and suspended for something you suspected yet did nothing to verify." Klein swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed like a trapped insect. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know he planted the keys." "No," Lorraine interrupted. "But you did know he has a history." Klein blinked. "Excuse me?" Lorraine reached into her suit pocket and retrieved a slim black device, a digital recording. Amira's eyes widened. Klein's knees nearly buckled. Lorraine tapped the screen. A voice filled the office, a male voice, tired, guilty, nervous. It was unmistakably Principal Klein. "Mr. Harrington, I understand. Yes, of course. Consider it handled. Yes. The donation will cover it. The staff will look the other way. Cole won't face consequences again." Amira covered her mouth. Klein's face drained of color until he looked ghost-like. That was years ago. It's taken out of context. "I swear," Lorraine stopped the recording. "Context?" she repeated, her tone a quiet blade. "You took money to bury offenses, to protect a student with known behavioral problems, and to shield the Harrington family name." Klein backed into his chair as if trying to physically retreat from the truth. "Mrs. Johnson, please. I was under pressure. Their family, everyone knows their influence. They fund half our programs. If I didn't cooperate, dozens of staff salaries would be cut. I was trying to protect the school." "No," Lorraine said sharply. "You were trying to protect yourself." Klein lowered himself into his seat, defeated. I made mistakes, but I can fix this. I can rewrite the report. I can reinstate Amira. I can." Lorraine leaned forward. "You are not in a position to fix anything," she said. "You failed your students. You enabled corruption. You endangered a child. And you would have let my daughter take the fall to protect your own career." Klein's eyes shimmered with panic. "Mrs. Johnson, please. I have a family. I've worked here for 30 years. Don't take this away from me." Amira watched quietly. The same man who earlier had spoken to her with cold dismissal, now begging desperately for mercy. But Lorraine's expression didn't soften. Not an inch. "I didn't come here for negotiations, Principal Klein," she said. "I came for accountability." Tears slid down the man's cheeks. He clutched the edge of his desk until his knuckles went white. I'm begging you. Don't report this. Give me a chance to correct everything. I'll put anything in writing. I'll discipline the staff. I'll just tell me what you want." Lorraine straightened. "I want a school where my daughter can walk without being hunted. I want staff who don't weaponize bias. I want a system that protects children, not donors." Klein lowered his head, shoulders shaking. "I can change," he whispered. Lorraine shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "You had years. You chose greed over safety, silence over truth, compliance over integrity." She stepped back, giving the room a cold, final glance. "And today," she added, "your choices have consequences." Klein stared at her, horror creeping into every feature. "Please, Lorraine, please." His desperation filled the office like a fog. But Lorraine remained centered, unflinching. From her jacket pocket, she withdrew her encrypted phone once more. A single command, a direct call, to the state authorities. Klein's breath sucked inward sharply. "No, no, you can't. Please, don't do this." The phone buzzed quietly as the call connected. "This is Director Lorraine Johnson," she said. "I need officers dispatched to Crestwood Academy immediately. Multiple counts of evidence, tampering, bribery, and obstruction of student safety." Klein collapsed into his chair, face buried in his hands. Amira watched silently as the man who once wielded unchecked power over her future now sat powerless over his own. Lorraine ended the call. She turned toward her daughter. "It's over. No one will ever treat you like that again." Amira nodded, her chest swelling with relief, awe, and newfound strength. Klein whispered into his palms, "My job, my career, everything, gone." Lorraine paused at the door, Then she spoke without looking back. You didn't lose your career today. You surrendered it the day you chose corruption over children. The room fell silent again. Not the silence of fear, the silence of inevitability. As Lorraine and Amira stepped into the hallway, the low rumble of police sirens could already be heard in the distance, growing louder, drawing closer. But Lorraine had not come to negotiate, and Klein's downfall was only the beginning. Outside, blue and red lights flashed through the windows as state officers arrived at Crestwood Academy. The late afternoon sun cast a harsh golden glow over Crestwood Academy's courtyard, stretching long shadows across the pavement. The normal hum of chatter had erupted into a chaotic buzz, students flooding every walkway, abandoning lunch tables and benches as word spread like wildfire. The cops are here for Cole. Phones were already out, screens angled toward the parking lot where police cruisers rolled in, lights flashing red and blue, a stark contrast to the usual monotone school day. The air vibrated with anticipation, disbelief, and a touch of fear. Cole stood frozen near the flagpole, flanked by a few trembling classmates who no longer dared to stand too close. His face had turned chalk white. His hands kept twitching, as if deciding whether to run or hide or simply crumble, but it was too late for choices. Two state officers approached, uniforms crisp, expressions unreadable. The taller one carried a set of handcuffs that glinted in the sunlight like a promise. "Cole Harrington?" the officer asked. Cole stuttered. Yeah, but look, there's been a misunderstanding. My dad will fix this, The officer's voice cut through his panic. "You're under arrest for suspicion of data theft, tampering with digital evidence, cyber intrusion, and filing a false police report." A wave rolled through the students. Gasps, whispers, shocked laughter. "No way, did you hear that? Data theft? Bro's going to juvie." Cole backed up until his shoulders hit the flagpole. "Wait, no, I didn't. This isn't. My dad can explain everything, I swear." But his father wasn't there. His influence wasn't there. His power wasn't there. Only the truth was. Lorraine watched from a distance, standing beside Amira near the steps. Shadow 7 lingered unseen, tucked into the periphery like ghosts ensuring order. Amira clutched her backpack straps but didn't shrink back. She stood taller now, chin slightly lifted even as her pulse raced with adrenaline. Students turned, noticing her. Eyes widened with something new, respect. The officer grabbed Cole's wrist. No, don't touch me," Cole shouted, struggling wildly. "This is unfair. I was set up. They set me up." The officer didn't flinch. Click, the handcuffs locked around his wrists with a metallic bite. The courtyard erupted. Phones shot into the air. Students leaned over balconies to record. Voices shouted from every angle, "He's getting cuffed." Finally, "Yo, Amira didn't do anything." He lied. Aster Inavarios. "That girl is the strongest person in this school. She stood up to him and won." Amira blinked, stunned. She'd never been applauded before. Not for surviving. Not for speaking the truth. Not for simply existing. Lorraine placed a hand gently on her shoulder, grounding her. "They see you now," she murmured. But Amira didn't feel triumphant. She felt the knots inside her chest, loosening one thread at a time. A strange mixture of relief, fear, and disbelief melting together. She wasn't invisible anymore. "Stop recording!" Cole screamed, face contorted in panic. "Delete those! I swear I'll..." But no one listened. Not anymore. The officer tightened his grip. "Calm down, son." Cole jerked away violently. "You can't do this. Do you know who my dad is?" Lorraine stepped forward slightly, just enough for Cole to see her clearly over the crowd. "Yes," she said softly. "And today, that doesn't matter." Cole's stomach dropped. The officers began escorting him toward the cruisers. Students parted automatically, creating a path lined with dozens of phones capturing the downfall of the school's most protected golden boy. As he passed, whispers followed him like a trail of smoke. "He ruined so many people's lives." And blamed Amira? "I never liked him anyway." Finally, someone's doing something. The cuffs clicked again as Cole tried to twist out of them. "Let me go! This is illegal! This is Mom! Dad! Someone help me!" But the only adults watching were Lorraine, the administrators, and officers who didn't care about his last name. As the officers pushed him into the back seat of the cruiser, a girl near the front of the crowd cupped her hands and shouted, "Amira, you're the strongest girl in this school." And suddenly the courtyard echoed, "Strongest girl." She didn't back down. She's brave. Amira for class preds. Girl's a legend. Amira's cheeks flushed. She didn't know whether to smile or hide. She looked up at her mother, eyes trembling. "I didn't do anything. I just survived," she whispered. Lorraine crouched beside her. "You survived lies," she said. "You survived cruelty. And you survived a system rigged against you." Her voice softened. "That takes strength far beyond their understanding." The cruiser door shut with a final slam. Cole's muffled screams faded behind the glass. As the car pulled away, a strange quiet settled a moment where everyone, even the loudest voices, recognized the gravity of what they'd witnessed. Amira exhaled slowly, but Lorraine remained still, gaze steady on the exit gate where the cruiser disappeared. "Is it over?" Amira asked. Lorraine shook her head gently. "No. This was only the preliminary action. The legal process now begins." Amira swallowed, dread creeping up her spine. "In court? Yes," Lorraine replied. "Cole's charges will go to juvenile court. There will be hearings, evidence, statements, and the school will face its own investigation." Amira's breath caught. "I have to speak there?" "If you choose to," Lorraine said. "I'll be with you every step." Students continued murmuring around them, chanting softly, "Strongest girl, strongest girl," like a protective shield. But even with their newfound respect, even with Cole's downfall, Amira felt a new fear forming. Court, judges, lawyers, interrogations. Her mother sensed it. She touched her daughter's cheek. "This is the pursuit of justice, not punishment. You're not alone," Amira nodded. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm scared." Lorraine's answer was gentle but unwavering. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, baby. It's doing what's right while you feel it." Behind them, Principal Klein watched quietly from the doorway, guilt eating him alive. Miss Dalton stood beside him, pale and shaken. The system they upheld had finally cracked open. But for Amira, this was just the beginning. But Amira's journey toward justice was far from complete. The courtroom battles were only just beginning. As police vehicles rolled away, Lorraine guided Amira toward the building, ready to prepare for the next phase, juvenile court proceedings. The Johnson home was usually warm, a quiet refuge filled with lavender-scented candles, soft throw blankets, and walls lined with framed photographs of Lorraine's proudest moments. Her academy graduation, her first field assignment, her promotion to director. But tonight, the house felt different. It felt hollow, as if the events at Crestwood had followed them home and settled in the corners like unwelcome shadows. Lorraine cracked the bedroom door open gently. "Amira," she whispered, "dinner's ready." Silence. She stepped inside. Amira sat curled on the far side of the bed, knees pulled tightly to her chest, face buried in her arms. The room was dim except for the soft glow from the nightstand lamp. Outside, the wind rattled gently against the window frame. "Sweetheart?" Lorraine asked quietly. Amira didn't lift her head. She didn't have to. Lorraine could see her shoulders trembling. She crossed the room and sat down beside her. "Talk to me." Amira shook her head. Her voice came out small, cracked. "I can't go back there." Lorraine exhaled, heart tightening. "Back where?" "School." Amira's voice trembled. I can't walk in there again. They'll stare at me. They'll whisper. They'll think things. Every hallway will feel dangerous. Every second will feel like the moment he grabbed me all over again." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, ashamed, not wanting to look weak in front of the strongest woman she knew. "I keep hearing the alarm," she whispered. "I keep seeing him pull me. I keep feeling everyone looking at me like I'm something to laugh at." Lorraine listened, the words sinking deep. Amira's hands shook in her lap. I don't want them to have power over me again, but every time I think about going back, my chest tightens, and I can't breathe. Panic. Fear. Trauma looping like a broken film reel. Lorraine reached out, taking her daughter's hands gently. Look at me. Amira hesitated, then lifted her eyes glassy, frightened. Young. Lorraine spoke softly, but with unmistakable strength. I know what that fear feels like. Amira blinked. You do? Lorraine nodded, eyes turning inward, as memories resurfaced, memories she rarely allowed herself to revisit. When I was your age, she began, I transferred to a new school in a town where people didn't look like me, and they made sure I felt it every single day. She paused, steadying her breath. They called me names. They shoved my books off my desk. Teachers ignored it. Students laughed behind my back. And one afternoon, a group of boys cornered me behind the gym. Amira's breath hitched. What happened? Lorraine looked out the window, watching the moonlight ripple on the glass. They told me I didn't belong there, that I wasn't good enough, that I would never be anything. Her voice shook not with weakness, but with an old wound reopening. I ran home crying. I told myself I'd never go back. Did you? Amira whispered. Yes, Lorraine said softly, but only because my mother taught me something I later built my entire career on. She placed both hands gently on Amira's cheeks. Fear is real, but so is your strength. Amira swallowed hard, tears gathering at her lashes. Lorraine continued, You were hurt. You were humiliated. You were betrayed by adults who should have protected you. Your fear isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign that you survived something cruel. Amira's eyes flickered, raw, vulnerable. Then why does surviving feel so heavy? Because healing, Lorraine said, is the hardest battle. She brushed a thumb across Amira's cheek. And you are already fighting it. A long silence settled, soft, fragile, but necessary. Amira leaned forward slowly until her forehead rested against her mother's shoulder. Lorraine wrapped her arms around her, holding her tighter than she had in years. You're not alone, baby, she murmured. You'll never be alone. Every step you take, I'll be right behind you. Amira's voice was muffled against her mother's chest. Do you really think I'm strong? Lorraine pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You stood in the center of a lie that was designed to break you, she said. But you didn't break. She smiled softly. And when the truth came out, you didn't hide. You watched it fall apart. A tear slipped down Amira's cheek, not from fear this time, but from something new. Hope. Lorraine cupped her daughter's chin gently. You are stronger than I was at your age, stronger than most adults I've met, and you don't owe anyone perfection. You just owe yourself the chance to heal. Amira exhaled shakily. But going back, what if it happens again? Then I'll be there, Lorraine said simply. And so will the truth. And this time, the school knows exactly who you are and who I am. A small, fragile smile tugged at the corner of Amira's lips. Lorraine continued, softer still. And if you decide you want to face those hallways again, do it for you, not them. Amira lifted her head. Her voice was quiet, but steadier than before. I think I want to try. Lorraine felt something loosen inside her chest, a knot untying. She brushed a hand through Amira's hair, the gesture gentle and grounding. We'll take it one day at a time, she said. You don't have to be fearless, you just have to be willing. Amira nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Okay, she whispered. I'll go back. Lorraine pressed a kiss to her forehead. That's my girl. The moon outside shifted behind the clouds, casting soft shadows across the walls. And for the first time since the nightmare began, the Johnson home felt warm again. And with the decision made, Amira stepped into the first fragile step of reclaiming her life, ready, finally, to return to Crestwood. The morning sunlight washed over Crestwood Academy like a fresh coat of paint, as if the school itself were trying to appear new, cleansed, reformed. But for Amira, the weight in her chest returned the instant the school came into view. Her hands trembled against her backpack straps as she approached the front steps. Lorraine walked beside her, not leading, not shielding, simply present. A silent force reminding Amira she didn't walk this ground alone. But today was different. Lorraine wouldn't step inside. This part of the journey belonged to Amira. "You call me if you need anything," Lorraine said softly. Amira nodded. "I know." She took a breath, shallow at first, then deeper, and stepped through the doors. The hallway felt familiar and foreign all at once. Lockers clanged. Sneakers squeaked across the tiles. Voices echoed from every direction. But something about the energy had shifted, like the air carried a new kind of awareness. She walked slowly at first. Then the whispers started. "There she is. That's her. She's the one who—" Amira braced herself, expecting ridicule, mockery, judgment. But then something unexpected happened. A girl from her math class stepped out of the crowd, cheeks flushed with guilt. "Amira, I'm really sorry," she said, "for not saying anything that day. I should have helped. I should have stopped him." Before Amira could answer, another student approached. "I believed Cole," he admitted quietly. "Everyone did. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve any of that." Then another, and another. The apologies came hesitantly, at first soft voices offering remorse, but soon they gathered strength. Some students bowed their heads. Others forced themselves to look her in the eye. A few even touched her arm gently as they passed. A silent gesture of support. Amira felt overwhelmed, standing in the center of a shifting tide she never imagined she'd witness. "Thank you," she whispered each time, because she didn't know how else to hold the weight of so many voices. Word had spread quickly, far beyond the courtyard chaos of Cole's arrest. Students had seen the footage, some leaked by accident, others circulated deliberately. They saw Amira being dragged. They saw the truth of the planted key. They saw Cole's downfall, his lies, and the evidence that finally vindicated her. The narrative had changed. The school no longer saw her as the outsider, the easy target, the quiet girl to blame. They saw her as someone who had stood against a storm she never asked for, someone who survived it with dignity. But change, as always, was never universal. 3 boys leaned against a row of lockers, arms crossed, expressions tight with resentment. Their jackets matched members of Cole's old crowd. They watched her pass with narrowed eyes, their whispers sharp enough to cut. "She thinks she's special now. The Secret Service girl. Bet she lied about half of it." Cole would never. But none of them stepped forward. None dared raise their voices above a whisper. Amira sensed their hostility like a cold draft brushing her skin, but she didn't shrink this time. She walked taller, even if it was forced, refusing to let their bitterness pull her back into fear. As she continued down the hall, more students parted for her, allowing her space not out of pity, but respect. Someone whispered, "She's brave." Another said, "Stronger than any of us." Her chest tightened, not with anxiety this time, but something close to pride, something that tasted unfamiliar, delicate. She reached her locker. On the metal surface, someone had stuck a small note with colorful handwriting. "We believe you. We support you." Anonymous Amira's breath hitched. She touched the note gently, as if afraid it might dissolve. Then a voice spoke behind her. "People can be cruel," the girl said, "but sometimes they can learn." It was Maya, the shy honors student, who had filmed the early altercation but hadn't posted it. Her eyes were watery, full of regret. "I should have said something sooner," Maya whispered. "I was scared, but I won't be again." Amira offered a small, sincere smile. "Thank you." Maya nodded and stepped away. The bell rang overhead, sending students scattering like startled birds. But the energy had changed, the sideways glances replaced with nods, the tension replaced with something gentler. As Amira walked to her first class, she noticed people making room for her in the hallway. Even teachers gave her a different look, one that acknowledged not just her innocence, but their own complicity in overlooking it for so long. Still, the bitterness lingered in pockets, a whispered complaint, a glare that held on to prejudice. Fear never leaves a school completely, nor does ignorance. But it could be confronted, perhaps even dismantled. When Amira slid into her seat in English class, the room fell quiet. Miss Dalton stood at the front, hands clasped, complexion drained. Her eyes briefly met Amira's and dropped quickly. Dalton had been removed from disciplinary duties. Word was she would face a hearing for her handling of the incident. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Her guilt clung to her like a second skin. Amira looked away. She wasn't ready to face Dalton, not yet. By lunchtime, the school had shifted into a new rhythm. Students approached Amira not to interrogate, but to offer support. "You didn't deserve it. I have cries. We're glad you're back. If anyone bothers you, tell us." Someone even said quietly, "You're the reason Crestwood might finally change." The comment lingered long after the student walked away. Change. Was that really possible? As Amira sat alone at a cafeteria table, watching the bustling room with new eyes, the intercom crackled overhead. "Attention students and faculty," Principal Klein's replacement announced. "We will be holding a mandatory parent-student assembly tomorrow evening to address recent events and discuss school-wide initiatives on racial equity, transparency, and safety procedures." Around her, students murmured, "Finally, about time. My parents are going to flip." Amira stared at the loudspeaker, heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and hope. She'd never wanted any of this. She hadn't asked to become a symbol, or a lesson, or a catalyst for change. She just wanted justice, and maybe, just maybe, peace. But as her mother had said, courage wasn't about fearlessness, it was about moving forward despite fear. Amira inhaled deeply, letting the noise of the cafeteria wash over her. Tomorrow, the school would finally confront what it had allowed to grow in its hallways. Tomorrow, the truth wouldn't just be seen, it would be spoken. And as the announcement faded, Amira realized her journey wasn't finished yet. The upcoming parent-student assembly would force Crestwood Academy to confront racism head-on, once and for all. The assembly hall at Crestwood Academy had never been this full. Rows of metal chairs stretched further than the eye could see, every one of them occupied by parents, students, and members of the newly restructured administration. The low rumble of tense conversation filled the air, fear, curiosity, and anticipation, all blending together beneath the high, arched ceiling. The stage lights flickered on, illuminating a long table where the new interim board sat. At the center of it stood Lorraine Johnson. She didn't wear her federal badge tonight. She didn't need it. Her authority radiated from posture alone, spine straight, chin lifted, expression calm but cold. She was a mother, a protector, a strategist, and a force of nature wrapped in one. The room fell silent as she stepped up to the podium. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice firm and clear. "Tonight is not about blame. It is about responsibility. It is about acknowledging failures and ensuring that every child at Crestwood is protected." A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. Lorraine continued, "In recent weeks, this school has witnessed an incident that revealed deep structural problems that have existed long before my daughter walked through these doors." Her gaze swept across the hall. Unchecked bullying, racial profiling, administrative bias, lack of accountability, and systems that protect privilege over truth. Parents shifted uncomfortably. Students glanced sideways at one another, grimacing at the accuracy. Lorraine clicked a remote. A slide appeared behind her. Crestwood Justice Initiative. A new framework for safety and equity. She walked across the stage, commanding each step. "I propose a mandatory code of conduct overhaul, including explicit protocols for handling racial discrimination and physical aggression, a zero-tolerance policy on evidence tampering, a requirement for third-party review of serious accusations, and digital protections to prevent unauthorized access to student data." A man in the audience stood. "Are you saying the previous administration covered things up?" Lorraine didn't hesitate. "Yes," gasps echoed. She added, "and children suffered because of it." Another parent raised her hand. "What safeguards will be in place to prevent that from happening again?" Lorraine nodded. We will implement transparent oversight committees, independent investigators, and upgraded cybersecurity systems. Every allegation of bullying or discrimination will be handled by trained specialists, not by staff with personal connections or biases. Applause broke out across the room, strong, supportive, grateful. But not everyone was clapping. At the far right side of the hall, the Harringtons sat stiffly in their chairs, avoiding eye contact with the crowd. Mr. Harrington's jaw was clenched so tightly it looked painful. Mrs. Harrington fidgeted with her bracelet, trembling. Their son was absent, detained by court order until his hearing. Someone in the crowd whispered loudly enough to be heard. They protected their son for years, at the cost of other kids. This never would have happened without them. A woman 2 rows behind them stood up. Your son terrorized half this school, and you knew it. You bribed administrators to look the other way. Mr. Harrington shot to his feet. You don't know anything. The room erupted. Parents shouted from every direction. Yes, we do. We have the recordings. You let him bully our children. You're just as guilty. Mrs. Harrington covered her face as tears spilled down. The anger in the hall was no longer just about Amira, it was a collective outcry for years of silent suffering. Lorraine tapped the microphone sharply. Enough. Her voice carried so much force that the entire audience froze, the chaos snapping back into order. This assembly is not about vengeance, she said. It is about ensuring no child, yours, mine, or theirs, is ever harmed again. Her eyes softened just a fraction as she looked at Mrs. Harrington. Families make mistakes. Institutions make mistakes. What matters now is how we move forward. Mr. Harrington sank slowly into his seat, humiliation swallowing him whole. Lorraine returned to the podium. Tonight, Crestwood Academy begins a new chapter, one where justice is transparent, where every child's voice matters, and where no student is sacrificed to protect donors or reputations. A swell of applause rose this time even stronger, unified. Behind the new board members, a banner was displayed. Crestwood Accountability Week. Building a safer, fairer school. Lorraine continued her address. In addition to new administrative structures, I've worked with the board to organize training programs on racial sensitivity, trauma-informed education, and digital security. These are mandatory for all staff, no exceptions. Miss Dalton, sitting in the back, lowered her gaze. She had agreed to the training as a condition for keeping her position, but the weight of her failure was etched into every line of her face. Lorraine shifted her tone. But it's not enough for adults to change. Students must also learn what accountability means. Anti-bullying councils will be established. Peer support systems will be strengthened. And we will elevate student voices, especially those who have felt silenced. A hand rose near the front. A young boy. Mrs. Johnson, is your daughter okay? Amira stiffened at the unexpected attention. Lorraine smiled gently. She is healing, and she is braver than you know. A new wave of soft applause filled the room. And speaking of bravery, Lorraine said, turning slightly toward the side of the stage, one student has shown extraordinary resilience and strength despite being subjected to immense cruelty. Amira's breath caught. She didn't know her mother planned this. She faced injustice. She faced humiliation. She faced fear. But she stood through all of it and forced this school to change. Murmurs spread. Heads turned. Lorraine extended her hand toward her daughter. Please welcome Amira Johnson. A spotlight clicked on. Students began chanting her name softly at first. Amira, Amira. Then louder. Amira, Amira. The applause rolled across the room like a rising wave of solidarity. Amira's heart pounded, palms sweating. She had never stood in front of a crowd like this, not willingly, not proudly, but something inside her shifted, something she thought fear had stolen. Strength, voice, worth. Lorraine whispered, It's your turn now. Amira swallowed, nervous but determined. She stepped onto the stage. The hall erupted in cheers, and as she faced the sea of faces supportive, expectant, Ready, Amira understood that it was finally her moment to speak. The moment Amira stepped into the spotlight, the crowd fell into a hush that felt almost sacred. Hundreds of faces turned toward her: teachers, parents, administrators, students who had once ignored her, feared her, mocked her, or simply watched her suffer in silence. Now, every single one of them waited for her to speak. The microphone stood only a few inches from her lips, but for a long moment she couldn't bring herself to breathe, let alone talk. Her heart pounded so loudly she wondered if the front row could hear it. Her palms were slick with sweat, her throat dry. Lorraine stood in the wings, not stepping in, not taking over, just waiting, believing. Amira forced one breath, then another. She stepped closer to the microphone. "Hi," she began softly. Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. "My name is Amira Johnson. Some of you know me, and some of you only know the rumors." A ripple of uneasy whispers moved through the room. Amira looked down briefly, grounding herself. When she lifted her eyes again, something sharper, stronger gleamed there. "I want to tell you what it feels like," she said. "To be blamed for something you didn't do." Silence dropped like a weight. At first, you think it's a mistake, a misunderstanding. You tell yourself that if you explain, people will listen. That if you cry, someone will care. That maybe the truth matters. Her voice trembled, but she didn't back away. "But sometimes," she continued, "the truth doesn't matter. Not at first. Because people look at you and see what they already want to believe." She scanned the crowd. Students shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their heads. A teacher wiped their eyes. "I was accused of stealing something I never touched. I was dragged, humiliated, recorded, turned into a joke online before I even knew what was happening." A sharp breath escaped from someone in the audience. "People didn't see me," Amira said. "They saw a stereotype. They saw a girl who must have done something wrong. They saw someone easy to blame because blaming me was easier than questioning someone popular." Her hands trembled, but she gripped the podium. "I want you to understand something. When lies are believed, it breaks something inside you." Her voice softened, almost a whisper. "I started to wonder if everyone was right about me. If maybe I really was somebody who didn't belong here. Somebody people were allowed to mistreat." Tears rolled down a few cheeks in the audience. "But I learned something important," she continued, voice rising with quiet fire. "Being a victim doesn't make you weak. Staying silent doesn't make you safe. And being alone doesn't mean you don't matter." She took a shaky breath. "I learned that you have to stand up even when your voice shakes. Even when people don't believe you. Even when it feels like the whole world is watching just to see you fall." A girl in the fourth row sobbed openly. Another student reached over to comfort her. A boy near the aisle wiped his nose with his sleeve. Amira continued, stronger now. "Bullying isn't just pushing someone. Racism isn't just a word. They are wounds. Invisible, deep, heavy wounds that stay even after the bruises fade." Several students nodded, tears streaming down their faces. She looked directly at the seniors in the front row, the ones who used to dominate the hallways. "And every time you laugh at someone's pain, every time you spread a rumor, every time you assume someone is lying just because of the way they look, you are choosing to be part of the problem." The room was silent, except for soft crying. Amira drew a breath, voice steady and brave. "But I'm still here. I came back. And I'm speaking now because I want every student who has ever felt invisible, ever felt hated, ever felt targeted, ever felt alone, to know this. You matter. Your truth matters. And you deserve justice." A wave of emotion swept the room like a tide breaking all at once. Parents dabbed at their eyes. Teachers looked stricken. Students clutched each other's hands. Amira felt her own voice catch, but she pressed through. "No one deserves what happened to me. No one deserves to live in fear, and no one deserves to be silenced." Her gaze flicked toward the Harringtons at the far edge of the hall. Their faces were pale, hollow, defeated not by humiliation, but by the realization of the pain their silence had permitted. Amira didn't glare at them. She didn't need to. She turned back to the microphone. I hope this school listens. I hope we change. I hope we never let what happened to me happen to anyone else. A pause. And I hope the next time someone is hurt, we believe them before we break them. The moment her last words settled, the room erupted not in chaos, but in applause. Thunderous, rising, echoing applause. Students jumped to their feet. Parents stood one by one. Even administrators, old and new, joined in, faces wet with tears. It wasn't polite clapping. It was cathartic, raw, grateful, reverent. Amira stood frozen, overwhelmed as the sound washed over her. She had spoken her truth, and they heard her. They really heard her. Lorraine stepped onto the stage, pride glowing in her eyes. She rested a hand on Amira's back as the applause continued, roaring through the hall like a storm of hope. When it finally quieted, the interim principal approached the podium. His voice wavered with emotion. Amira, on behalf of Crestwood Academy, thank you for your strength, your honesty, and your bravery. He turned toward the audience. Tonight, the school is honored to introduce a new annual recognition given to students who demonstrate extraordinary courage in the face of injustice. A staff member carried a velvet-lined box onto the stage. The principal opened. Up inside lay a silver medal engraved with Bravery Award. Crestwood Academy. The principal lifted the medal carefully, almost reverently. This year, he said, voice thick with emotion, the inaugural Bravery Award goes to Amira Johnson. The hall erupted again, cheers, applause, tears, shouts of her name. Amira, Amira, Amira. Amira's hands covered her mouth as Lorraine fastened the medal around her neck. The medal was cool against her skin, but it warmed almost instantly as if absorbing her heartbeat. She had walked into Crestwood broken. She now stood before them as a symbol of resilience, and as the cheers echoed through the hall, Amira realized her story wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about leading others toward justice. The stage lights dimmed as the ceremony ended, preparing the way for the final chapter. The sun hung low over Crestwood Academy, spilling warm hues of orange and gold across the courtyard. The chaos of recent weeks had faded, leaving behind a kind of hush, a fragile peace that felt new, almost unfamiliar. Students drifted home in small clusters, their laughter soft, their footsteps light. For the first time in a long time, the school grounds did not feel like a battlefield. Amira stood near the old oak tree in the center of the campus, the Bravery Award medal resting coolly against her chest. The medal caught the sunlight, reflecting tiny glimmers across the pavement. She ran her fingers across the engraved letters gently, as if still confirming it was real. She breathed in slowly. For the first time since she had stepped onto this campus, the air did not choke her. It felt free. Lorraine walked toward her daughter, her silhouette sharp against the sunset. Her stride was calm, deliberate, no longer carrying the tension of a parent forced into warrior mode. Today, she moved like someone finally able to breathe again. She stopped beside Amira. "Do you feel it?" Lorraine asked quietly. Amira nodded. "Everything feels lighter." They stood there together, looking out over the courtyard, bathed in warm dusk. The school building, once a place of fear, now looked transformed, softened by the fading light. Students, still passing by, waved at Amira. Some smiled shyly. Others called out, "See you tomorrow, Amira. You did amazing today. You're a hero." Amira blushed each time, still not entirely used to the new attention. When the last group of students disappeared beyond the gates, silence fell again, gentle, comforting. Lorraine placed a hand on the back of the bench, leaning slightly as she looked at her daughter. "You're different," she said softly. Amira turned to her. "Different how?" "You stand differently now," Lorraine replied. "Your shoulders, they're not carrying the same weight." Amira exhaled, letting her gaze drift across the courtyard. "I didn't think I would make it through all of this," Lorraine nodded. "I know. I didn't think anyone would believe me," Amira admitted. "Or that the truth would win." Lorraine smiled, just a small, sad curve of her lips. "That's because justice," she said, "doesn't arrive on its own." Amira looked at her mother, waiting. Lorraine's voice deepened, filled with years of experience, pain, and resilience. "Justice doesn't walk through the door when you need it," she said. "It doesn't fall from the sky. It doesn't save you just because you deserve saving." She paused, turning fully to her daughter. "It has to be pulled, dragged, forced awake." Her eyes softened. "We don't wait for justice, Amira. We bring it. We demand it. We fight for it when no one else will." Amira swallowed, emotion tightening her throat. Lorraine stepped closer, her tone steady and unwavering. "Justice doesn't come on its own," she said again, slower this time, letting every word land. "We have to drag it into the light ourselves." Amira felt the truth of it settle deep inside her, heavy, warm, empowering. She whispered, "That's what you did for me." Lorraine shook her head gently. "No, you did that. Your courage did that. I only followed your lead." Amira blinked in surprise. "My lead? You stood up," Lorraine said. "Even when you were terrified. Even when the world turned against you. Even when you thought you were alone." She smiled. "I didn't drag justice to you, Amira. You pulled it toward yourself the first moment you refused to break." The words wrapped around Amira like a blanket, softening everything that had been sharp, healing everything that had been bruised. The sky deepened into deeper shades of amber and soft rose. The wind brushed gently through the trees, carrying faint scents of cut grass and spring air. Amira let out a long, quiet breath. "What happens now?" Lorraine looked around the campus at the walls that had held so much pain and so much transformation. "Now," she said softly, "you live." Amira smiled, small at first, then brighter, more confident. A smile she hadn't worn in months. She touched her medal again, then let it fall against her chest. "I guess I start the new semester tomorrow." Lorraine chuckled lightly. "Yes, as the girl who changed this school." Amira bit her lip. "I don't want people to see me as a symbol." "They won't," Lorraine said. "They'll see you as someone who survived, someone who taught them to see differently, someone who showed them the truth." Amira considered that. "Is that good?" she asked quietly. Lorraine put an arm around her shoulders. "It's powerful," she said, "and sometimes power is the beginning of healing." They stood that way for a while, mother and daughter, shoulder to shoulder, watching the sunset melt into the horizon. Eventually, Amira straightened, stepping forward toward the path that led to the school gates. Her silhouette stretched long across the pavement, her footsteps steady, confident. "Ready?" Lorraine asked. Amira turned, the last rays of sunlight glinting off her medal, illuminating her eyes. "Yes," she said. Then she added, with a smile that held all the courage she had earned, "I'm ready for the new year." Lorraine watched her daughter step forward, not timidly, not cautiously, but boldly. The shadows of the past no longer clung to her. The wounds no longer defined her. The lies no longer trapped her. Amira walked toward her future with a new strength, a symbol of resilience, dignity, and unbreakable truth. Behind her, Lorraine whispered a vow, a blessing, a reminder. Justice doesn't arrive on its own. We pull it into the world with our courage. Amira didn't look back. She didn't need to. The sun dipped below the school roofline, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. And as she walked confidently into the new school year, Amira Johnson became the living symbol of courage that Crestwood Academy would never forget. And just like that, the lies collapsed under their own weight, and the bullies who thought they owned the parking lot learned what real power looks like. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, but arrives in a black SUV with federal clearance, and a mother ready to burn the whole system down for her daughter. Amira didn't just win. She exposed a truth bigger than the accusation itself. Never mistake silence for weakness. Before you go, what moment of this story shocked you the most? If this video hit you hard, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's more justice coming your way.